I think I was very lucky to have an upbringing where my parents gave me a sense of self, where I was given the ability to make my own choices. I think a lot of girls, especially in our country and many others, their ability to make choices is taken away from them. So I think it's very important for us to raise bold girls, for us to raise girls that push the envelope, for us to invest in the girls in our communities, in our countries, because once a girl stands on her own feet, she not just takes her family forward, she takes her community forward, which in part takes the country forward. Women are 50% of the world's population, and we have always had to take a step behind. And I think it is imperative, our prerogative, and our responsibility, men, women alike, parents, grandparents, and as communities and societies, to empower our children, our girls. And I am a result of a family that empowered me. From I was 4 years old, my father encouraged opinions where I used to sit with my parents' friends, and my dad comes from a middle class background, so does my mom, Ambala, conservative background. But he always asked for my opinion, and not in a flippant way, ki, "Achha, let's see what a 4-year-old has to say," but in a serious way. And that always made me feel like I'm important. And I told this story actually, I think I told it in my book, but it was really interesting. In military houses, they have nameplates outside your barracks where it says who's staying here. So my father was a major back then, and my mother was a captain. So the nameplate said Major Ashok Kumar Chopra and the captain Madhu Chopra. So I looked at it when it was being installed and it was hammered into our house, and I asked my father, I must have been in kindergarten, I think that time. So KG mein baith ke, I asked my father, I said, do I live in this house? And he said, yes, you do. So I said, then why is my name not up there? And my dad changed the nameplate. And it said Priyanka Mimi Chopra KGB, which was kindergarten B. That is what I mean. Giving me a sense of self, not making fun of me, not saying, "Dekha isne kya bola tha, see how funny that was." It was not funny. It came from a serious place for me, even at 5. And it was taken seriously by my parents. So that's what I mean. I think it is really, and as a new parent myself, and as many of you may be, and aspiring to be, I think it's very important for this generation to invest in our girls. It's so important.
I think you've redefined that word bold.
In a good way?
In a good way. पहले कहते थे अरे बड़ी bold है.
बड़ी bold है. वो मुझे वो भी कहा था. Don't worry. बड़ी bold है ये. I converted it into being a good thing.
Absolutely. So Priyanka, you are now headlining Citadel, first Indian actor to headline a global spy series. Okay? Yes. Here's the thing, okay? So this series, guys, costs $200 million, which Google tells me is upward of 1,600 crores. I can't even figure that one out.
मुझे तो maths नहीं आते. I can't convert between rupees and dollars.
खैर, बहुत पैसे हैं, बहुत पैसे हैं.
It's above my pay grade.
But Priyanka, this is such a massive achievement. What do you want it to do for yourself, but also for other actors?
It's my 10th year. 10th year, I think, 2013, that I actually started looking for work in Hollywood. And after 10 years, you're seeing me do a show like this. So it takes a lot of perseverance, especially for immigrant actors that try to come into Hollywood and create a space for themselves, whether that's Indian or from any other country. Because when I started working, especially when you think about South Asians, I mean, there were like 4 or 5 in the room, and we all knew each other. And now, the quest for all of us, and that could be Mindy, Aziz, me, Carl Penn, few actors, was always to open the door and make more space for more like us. And when I got initial pushback in Hollywood, when I was, looking for the kind of work that I was used to, and I'm not afraid of hard work. I made my showreel. I walked in to meet, producers, filmmakers. I showed them the work that I had done in India. I'm not someone who walks around with the ego. I believe in hard work, and I think only your work can speak for itself. So I used to walk in, I took meetings, I did auditions, and I got smaller roles, and I made them bigger and bigger and bigger, and slowly it took time to be able to get to this place. So I think that now that I feel like I have, my feet on solid ground, for the last 4 or 5 years, it really has been my quest to be able to create a lot more space for not just me, but people like me, actors, writers, directors, women behind the camera, in front of the camera. I have a first look deal with Amazon Prime, in which I'm producing a lot of TV and film for them, and most of them are hyper-specific stories about South Asia and our diaspora. And I feel so proud to be able to actually work with a streamer that is so interested in India, Indian stories, and and I signed this first look deal with them 4 years ago. It wasn't even now, but are so invested in telling culturally specific stories, and I love to be able to be at the forefront of that. I'm working with incredible writers, new writers, like I did with Purple Pebble in India when I started making regional movies. I only worked with first-time producers, first-time directors, first-time writers, and that somehow gives me a lot of joy. I never had anyone who did that for me or opened up doors for me when I joined the industry, and I want to be the shoulders for other people to jump off of, because I have got this privileged responsibility or an opportunity.
That's so wonderful. Thank you.
It's such a great place to be in, where I'm telling you that there's this one show that Purple Pebble was presenting, and they had been, small movie, and they'd been knocking on all of these doors, and we got them in, and they're in at Prime now, actually, again, my home. But, she gave me a hug, this film, and you guys will hear about it, so I don't want to talk about it right now, but she gave me a hug, and she said, to be able to just know that I have someone I can call and say, hey, I'm from your part of the world, can you connect me to someone? Can you show me the way in a place where, you don't know anybody? Like, I did not have that. So to be able to be that conduit for someone really gives me so much satisfaction.
Priyanka, you've been famous for most of your adult life, right?
More than half my life.
Yeah, more than half your life. But I feel now the fame is sort of just outsized, right? You have 85 million people just following you on Instagram.
Right.
It's insane.
It's nuts.
Yeah.
It really is nuts.
So, but your job is to be an actor, right? It's to enter a character and make us forget about Priyanka. Does that get harder the more successful you become? How do you nurture the actor?
I think fame is a byproduct of my job. It's not what I was seeking when I started working. I was not like, oh, I want to do this movie and be famous. No, I wanted to win awards. I wanted people to like my work. I wanted to be taken seriously as an artist. I feel like I'm a very creative person. So they both kind of become one. You have to protect that by protecting yourself. So when I go onto set, I try not to play myself ever. I don't think I've ever played me. Like, you all may know me because you know me as Priyanka, and you've known, my interviews or conversations. But I don't think I'm similar to any of the characters I've ever played, because that's been a very deliberate decision. Especially for, like, Nadia. Nadia has no sense of humor. She never smiles. And I'm always laughing. I'm goofy, I'm funny. She's, like, really serious. And she keeps the world's burden on her shoulders, and she's really tough, and I cry in 1 second, and I'll tell anyone any secret, and I'm very open with my inner circle, and that keeps me sane. It keeps me rooted. It keeps my sense of self. But I think the same thing I do with my characters is I really protect them, so I can be myself with my people in my home. But when I go to set, I don't feel the need to be me at all. So you spend time with your filmmakers, you break down characters. Like on this show, Richard and I really depended a lot on each other because our characters are so intertwined. So there were times where, a line would come and I would say, or he would say that, hey, I don't think we've talked about this, because the show is non-linear. It goes back and forth in time. So you'd say, I don't think we've talked about this yet. And I would say, oh yeah, it was cut from the previous script. And then we'd go back to the writers and say, hey, I think this needs to be amended. So we really worked as a unit on this one, which helped us kind of navigate, the characters and be very honest and true to them versus ourselves.
So when you walk into the set, when you're in front of the camera, you are fully able to disconnect from the noise around you?
Oh yeah, girl.
Really?
That's what I do. That's literally my job. is between action and cut. I have been trained in Bollywood movies. Do you know how many streets I've danced on?
Yeah.
I've been in the middle of Trafalgar Square, guys, with 500 people around me dancing in front of a horse. So, I mean, nothing moves you after that.
Yes, this is true. But Priyanka, when we look at you, right, from the outside, we see this woman in charge, right? We see the boss lady who's living in this 23,000 square foot home with this rock star husband, with a gorgeous daughter, right? But you do talk about how tough it's been. Okay, you've talked about the politics, the bullying, the trolling when your daughter was born, all sorts of comments are passed. How do you actually disconnect from that?
I came to terms with the byproduct of fame very early in my career. When I first joined the industry, I quickly realized that women specifically, but generally actors or talent in the industry, they are more written about, and this is a you thing, I mean, not you, but like a media thing. People like to write about everything else but their achievements. Media likes to write about how they fell on a stage, how they tripped up on a word, or anything and especially with women, at that time, we were mostly known by who's her boyfriend, who is she seeing, and so you had no identity. And that happened to me right at the beginning of my career. So I took a very decisive decision to keep my private life very private. I was ferociously private about it. I've never ever spoken about it. And it's something that I maintain even now because I'm a public figure, which means most of my life is for consumption. You can talk about me, I can't stop you. You can break bread with your grandparents and say, "Achha, usne to ye pehna tha, ya usne to ye kiya tha, uska to ye hua tha." Main to nahi rok sakti. I can't come into your houses and do that. So I have to make peace with the fact that that's going to happen. And I did that very early. And I started protecting myself by creating a really tight circle of people that I trust. My team, my family, my friends. And that's I can count 20 people in my life that have been consistent for years. And I recommend that to all young people. We live in the world of social media, which is kind of like being famous anyway. It's kind of the same thing. You are always looking for validation on the internet. We're all looking at comments. We're all looking at what did someone say about my picture. We're, fixing it. We're trying to find the best angle. And on social media, including me, we all put out the best versions of ourselves, right? I don't have that luxury as a public person. You can, literally lip read and, say that I said something and that'll become an article. And I have not said that at all. So I made peace with that very long time ago when I wrap work, whatever time that is at night. Nowadays it's usually 7 o'clock where, not today obviously, but it's usually 7 o'clock where I'm done with my day and I need to sit with my family and my friends and have time for myself to enrich my soul. I didn't do that in my 20s and I burnt myself on both sides. I went through a really, really dark phase where I was working too much. I didn't know how to emotionally feel. I was dealing with a lot of loss and grief and changes, and I just had to step back and take time out and, prioritize what was important. And I'm very clear about my priorities today, and I'm the most content and happy I've ever been.
Well, you look it.
Thank you.
But Priyanka, coming back to what you had talked about, specifically about the Hindi film industry, specifically about the politics or the bullying, what do you think we can do to make it a more equitable space? What can we actually intentionally do?
I think conversation is very important. I think we get caught up in pointing fingers, we get caught up in blame games. And cancel culture is so prevalent in our lives right now that people think that's the solution to everything. And I completely disagree. I think it is never one or two persons' faults. I think it is a society and it's a community that perpetuates that. And I think we need to start thinking about how we create opportunities or create a positive workspace, how we make space for others instead of actually, having a smaller and smaller table. How does your table become larger and larger, and how do you give more people a seat on that table? And I think maybe it was that experience for me, and it wasn't the industry. I have incredible friends, and I've worked with the most amazing filmmakers in the industry. But it's certain cliques that always do that, and that'll happen in your profession, I'm sure in your profession, including mine. And I think the conversation around creating more space for people is very important in every job, and to create a good working environment, a positive working environment with transparency, with respect. And I think respect cannot be demanded, it has to be commanded. And I think when you walk into a room, you have to walk in with a sense of self. And that's very hard when you're young and when you're new and you're scared. It's really difficult to do. But I always encourage young people, especially young girls, that and young people in general, in the world of information today, where information is coming at you left, right, and center, whether it's misinformation, fake information, correct information or not, you're getting all kinds of information. You have to really take time from your spirit and in your heart to see what actually affects you, what really moves you, what you care about. What is important to you? What are your priorities? And I think the noise just kind of goes away. And when the noise kind of goes away, you find that self-confidence. And that's what I tried to do is I, of course, was intimidated. Of course, I was, weak in the knees and terrified. And, but what I did was I tried to cut the noise out and I took my next step. And I took my next step. And I didn't think about the large picture. I didn't think about where I was going. But I knew if I take one step and I make it excellent, and I take next step and I make it excellent, hopefully my journey will be excellent. And here we are now.
Citadel started as a conversation you had with Amazon studio head Jennifer Salke years ago.
5 years ago. Crazy.
Yeah. It's amazing.
It's crazy.
And the fact that she's in charge, I think has some role to play also in the fact that you said that this is the first time in your life that you've got pay parity. Mm-hmm. So a woman in the position of power really makes a difference.
Absolutely.
So we do this, Film Companion does a report with Amazon and with Omax called Oh Woman, yeah. And in this, so it's an annual report on women in entertainment. And last year, the report found that if a woman is heading any project, it even impacts on the talk time that women have in trailers. It's 35% if there's a woman in charge, it's 22% if there's a man in charge.
Wow.
It's incredible.
Wow.
It's incredible. But the sad thing is, in the projects that we looked at in the Hindi film industry, only 10% of the HODs were women. So how do we change this?
We are already changing it.
Yes, absolutely.
And I'm so proud, honestly, of the women of my generation, female actresses, directors, and a few amazing men who have taken it upon themselves to create more opportunities for women in the industry, in front of the camera and behind the camera. And I think that's very important. To be able to, we have Aparna sitting here who heads the India side of this incredible studio. She's taken hit after hit, but is still formidable and taking decisions and pulling up other women. Jen, who has set that top-down tone to be able to do that. I think that the more we push for women to be in positions of power, the more we'll see women in decision making, and then the more you'll see the impact, not just on women, but communities, on men, on women alike. Because women have been deprived of opportunity for such a long time, and especially positions of power, we have to work 4 times harder than men to be able to get to that position. We have to prove ourselves so much more than men to get to be able to be in a position of power. It's harder, when a woman is in charge, she's tough, there are words that are used for her which are derogatory, which when it comes to a man, we would say, wow, that's so impressive, he's so powerful. But with women, we get intimidated, and we have to change that. And that conversation needs to change. We have to normalize, wanting women in positions of power, respecting women in positions of power. I mean, we're from a country that we're in India. We pray to goddesses. We believe in goddesses. Durga is prevalent to all of us, and who follow the belief system. And I think that we really have to go back and remind ourselves that women are what make our families. We are matriarchal, as well. We believe in the power of dadis and nannies and moms, and we always go back to that. Why can't we take that outside of our homes as well, and inside of our homes? Why can't the conversation about equity? And I see it happening already. I've seen it in so many homes. In my own home, when my mother was younger, my grandmother had 4 daughters, and my grandfather was very sure that they'll all be educated and they'll all have academic jobs, and they all do. And then they've changed the lives for their daughters, and then their daughters are changing the lives for their daughters. So and the family in general. So I think it's really important to have the conversation, and I think it's very important to raise our sons respecting our daughters.
Yeah.